Only if at the end I deserve it, but thank you. Says it all. Just very quickly, because we have to. We're here at DevGAMM. Some of you are in BizDev, some of you aren't, some of you attend my folders. Networking, kind of want to tell you who I am, so that makes it contextually okay for you to decide if you want to talk to me or not. So I'm part of Keywords. We're all over the world. We do a lot of stuff. I'm responsible for Engage, which includes marketing services like creating of trailers, events, processes, social media. But the most important thing we do is the player engagement piece, where we engage with players. Come in, if you're coming in. Okay. Player engagement. And we're spread all over the world in 11 different locations of player engagement, doing stuff like community, social media, trust and safety, and of course player support. And I'm going to be talking about that. So there's me. The most important thing is that I can cook a mean lasagna and a good butter chicken. If you ask for the recipe though, I'm going to have to kill you because it's a family secret. CX is parcel of my passion and my heart. I want to talk to you about that type of stuff. And of course, only for games. And now I want to talk about like you. So just to get an idea, because I could just dump information on you and some of it just may be meaningless. So just very quickly, I know some folk, who here are actually working actively in community? Hands up. 1, 2, 3. Sort of. This Engage thing's working well for you, eh? Cool. Okay, so some of what I say, there'll be quite a lot of text. Forget the text, it's because at the end of the day, this deck needs to go out and be contextually sound for folk. We're going to go through it. But I'm also going to go through quite a lot of why we do these things. Some might be boring for people who do community, but I always find you still learn. So good, that's a great mix in the audience. Why trust and safety? It was a nice to have. Even 3-4 short years ago, it was a nice to have. It was kind of like, yeah, those companies that can afford it do it. The rest of us, community takes care of itself. There's been such a massive increase in the way we interact in the world through COVID and post-COVID, in the way lifestyles have changed, in the way we engage with each other, in the way we talk, that you have to now, it's a must-have. So why trust and safety? Mostly because you're looking to be seen as a place that is trusted, the community is safe, it's a cool place to come and hang out and play with your friends, and so you want to eliminate the toxic content, you want to make sure you're compliant, and compliance is going to become one of the biggest issues on any community's agenda. And again, I always say, like, you often find in the mix of the audience, it's people who are close to community, and you're not seeing massive dev folk here. And who should be sitting here? They should be packed with devs. Who do they build the game for? Without a community, it doesn't matter how good a dev you are, you just don't have a business. So it's about protecting your brand and streamlining the workload. You do need your trust and safety. And why I wanted to put that up front is because it comes back to understanding the community. I often come to these and I go to the pitch sessions and I go to there and and you say to the guys, what are you doing? Oh, I'm building a game. And you say like, okay, so what are the first 2 questions you should ask when you build a game? And they all go, oh, is it going to be an MOA? Is it going to be a first-person shooter? Is it going to RPG? I go, no! Who's going to play the game? Who are you building this game for? And then the second question, okay, so we know who we're building the game for. Is it going to be a fast-paced first-person? No. When they come and play the game, how are you going to look after them? Because it's those 2 things that decide the longevity of a game, the health of the game, and the scalability of the game. It's so often overlooked. Small example, self-harm or self-care. It happens much more on a daily basis than you know in terms of what's out there. Where are your structures to get local authorities to help folk who've just like somehow been hacked or lost all their coins, they're at a very low point in their life and they're going to end it all? We're this international game, how do you help that player? You have to have some kind of setup in your community to be able to react to that. That is so when you're a dev building the game, it's never in your mind. So you really need to understand your community. And the funny thing is, if you go and do the research, I don't know, I grew up through the 70s and 80s, I'm giving away my age here. My first computer was a Commodore 64, so you can understand. And you get lies, damn lies, and statistics. I can put statistics together any way I want. And so what you really need to do is holistically understand the community. You'll get the breakdown, the scientific breakdown of who's playing your game. You'll get how badly things are going or how toxic are things in the community. You'll get all the positivity of why people play your game. And so, like, what do you believe? And you really, really need to understand that community. And so that's why the community engagement and building this whole trust and safety infrastructure and putting the frameworks in place is so important. Because if you're not able to tap into that, you're not able to shift or understand the processes in your game. So, it is part of the work that has to get done prior to going to, alpha or beta, and it hardly ever gets done. Anyway, but keeping it fun and real. Why, again, do you want to do this? A lot of this seems to be common sense, but you'll be surprised how sort of it isn't taken up as an idea. You really want to be able to build this community to draw this fine line. Why I kind of talk about making community safer, but keeping it still fun and engaging, is there's this very fine line. I often talk to folk and they say, yeah, in our community, we're going to have guidelines, and if anyone breaks the guidelines, we're going to ban them, and we've got software that automatically bans them, and there's no interacting with an agent, and they can never get their account back. Firstly, bots can build thousands of accounts. You just close that, build another one. Secondly, same for a human, just maybe at a slower pace. And all you're going to do is just create toxicity and make it. And usually, just think about this in your own life. When legislation is enforced from outside onto a community, a government telling you to do stuff, etc., it's usually always overburdening, not in tune with the community, and only the good people who follow the rules tend to suffer because the bad people are never going to follow the rules. So you have to have this very fine line of being involved in the community and managing the community, and also letting the community grow and evolve and become the safe, wonderful space on its own. It's a fine line. You can over-engage and put in these really strict guidelines and put all of your AI software on the hardest or highest levels to catch all the bad actors. Or you could take the approach of, we're going to create a framework, we're going to invite people to join, and we're going to try and make them like-minded and adopt and become the norms and values of the community themselves, that if folks step outside of that, the community itself says, hey, no more, we don't like you, you're out. And that's kind of the balance you're looking for in how you build this process. So you want to be able to look at things like fostering positive interactions, rewarding good behavior, building trust. Those are the key areas you should be spending. And so not to be overarching, and I've seen it happen from some of the larger corporations when they go into the community. You have to sign these terms and conditions, and you can't this, and you can't that, and you can't. Like, what's the fun of playing the game? Again, what's appropriate? An adult, first-person, highly competitive shooter should have some foul language in it to make it fun. But is that appropriate for 13 or below? Okay, so if you're going to have some rules around your community, create the environment which will protect 13-year-olds. There are ways that you could, like, your game could be appropriate to be played by youngsters, but not in an open group where they could get seriously sworn at by older folks. Have some kind of age verification process that they're forced through if they're under a certain age. And they can only play when you do your matchups with those type of folk. And you know, well, is that possible? Yes, it is. And can you imagine how much better your game can be if you can spread it to a wider community, but also within the community have these compartments? And so that's why keeping it fun and real is think about what's the outcome here? What are we trying to get done with the community? How are they going to interact with each other? And how can we make it as easy as possible for that to be a positive, trusting, and safe experience? So some of the strategies around that is where I want to spend a bit of time on the slide. And if I open it up to the audience, some of you'll know some of these things. But you do need to implement robust implementation tools. But the first thing you need to think about, again, is what framework, what benchmarks, what levels do we need to create? If you just stick a tool in, who's going to be accountable for what happens when the tool sees something? Now, a lot of the tools, community served, active fence, GGWP, modulate, etc., depending if it's in-game chat, community, the whole Discord bots itself, etc., can be set to quite high standards. So who's going to manage that and to what level? So the very first thing you're going to do is, if you're going to implement your robust moderation tools, is you should have that framework worked out of what are the base rules, what are the base levels, what are the benchmarks in the community that are just like no-go areas. then, and honestly, the software is that good these days that it really, really does pick up a lot of the crap. And the black and white stuff is easy for the software to sort out, which means you need technology and humans. Often I'm seeing people say, well, just put humans in, we don't need the technology, or the technology solves all problems. It's really a combination. So putting in the robust moderation tools is there to support still a human team, to help them scale for huge volume and really only deal with very clever folks who find ways around using the software, and it's amazing how creative. If that creativity on trying to sneak past some of the rules in a community could be bottled and turned into sort of productivity fuel, you can't believe what could be built in the world. It's amazing how smart they get. But anyway, and then you need human moderators on top of that. As I said, it's a whole process, but it needs to be based on guidelines. And how best to do that is often involve the early adopters in your community. They can become ambassadors and champions and share with you. I often also see guys saying, well, in our community, we don't really need outside moderators or third-party moderators. We have all the volunteers. That used to work, but it's really not viable with the way legislation is going, with the way risk is going, with the way compliance is going. You're opening up a huge amount of risk in that environment where you have the game moderated by gamers themselves. It shouldn't be their responsibility. You kind of have a reward system that if they are a moderator, there's kind of skewed incentives. You should have them involved and have them as ambassadors and reward good behavior, but you shouldn't have it as your main moderation process. It's not best practice. And then again, some of the standard stuff is educating the community. How often do you know that there are terms and conditions? When you play a game, there's terms and conditions. Who reads those, honestly? And part of that's all to do with the community as well. Educate the community in simple, easy terms. There's podcasts, there's live video, there's short 30-second bursts, there's updates, there's engaging them. Then they send out a quiz. Hey, first person to answer this gets 10 more gems. And then that gets published back in. So really, really educating the community. And then robust reporting systems off the back. You need to see the trends over time. You need to be able to report to management for the ROI to show that the investment needs to stand and that they do need to keep investing in this environment, and to show the business case of why you need to look at looking after the communities from point of view of safety. That's often the first thing you come up against, especially in the tougher times. Hey, can we get rid of this? It's costing us money. Is there any way, but do we really need to look after the community? So collaborate with the experts. In an environment like this, come and talk to Mafalda, come talk to me, come to talk to others who've built communities. What happens in Discord? What have you learned? What haven't you learned? Attend the workshops. That's kind of where you're going to learn and grow your knowledge, because again, everything in gaming is about the community. And it's so frustrating at times when you see all the money that goes into marketing to acquire customers, all the money that goes into developing the game, and how little comes into the actual player engagement. And it just frightens me every time. So if we can help you build that model, that's where you pick my brain. I'll help you in any way I can to put a proper model out there to the powers that be. It doesn't matter who you use. I'm agnostic. We still want the best for our communities. So I want to just focus a little on like what part do you need to do when you're a community manager? You often hear, oh, that's not my job. I'm a community manager. I just have to distill part of the content process for the Korean leg, and I have to get stuff converted into Korean. I have to work 4 hours a week, and I just have to send the stuff out to that, community manager. No, that's just someone who's managing a little bit of content. Community manager is probably one of the hardest jobs with many, many hats, and it's not recognized. What needs to be integrated and no longer a silo literally is everything that touches engagement. And it's still today. I go to companies and they say, hey, customer support, can I talk to you about trust and safety? Oh, no, that's not us. You have to go talk to those folk. And you go there, oh, we only do anti-fraud. You have to talk to Pete over there. And Pete says, yeah, well, we've got the software, so we don't need anything else. Well, who does it talk to? Oh, no, there's a little few people in this back room. We call them the mushrooms. We keep them in the dark and feed them bullshit. They're stuck in the mushroom corner of the... And do they actually talk to customer support? No. Does anything triage out of Discord to them? No. Does anything triage? No. This literally has to be your areas of integration. Your community and social needs to understand and know the rules and how to self-govern, but you give them the platform to do there. Learning and development is key because you're going to have some churn or change with agents. And the same in the community. Have it, as I said, open platform education is key. The quality of service. QA and bug reporting and everything does often lead to toxicity in a community, and often that's not linked. Trust and safety, privacy, data analytics, all of these need to be integrated. We do spend a lot of time doing that with a lot of our clients. You'll be surprised now what comes out at the back end around sentiment analysis on things, etc., that you can get these days. And it's key in the community space that you are the owners of this. This is why I say, if I had to leave a revolution today, my aim is over the next 5 years, community managers should be paid more than CEOs. That's how valuable you are. Don't forget it. And this is kind of why. There's no other place in the whole business that comes together like where the players are playing and how they interact with each other. Just think about that for a second. So it looks kind of like this. I call it the infinity loop of player happiness. The longer the player is happy and the longer the players stay engaged, the longer they're ambassadors for your game and they'll bring other people to your game. So you need an envelope of trust and safety. And linked into all of that, everything else you do will drive how your community acts. You do need to keep your players happy, so you will need to have some kind of system of being productive in around your player engagement. How can you make player engagement easier and more accessible? How does that link back to the community? How does that triage? Innovation. What new tools are coming out? That's why you come to the DevGAMMs and you go listen to what's happening in AI and what's happening in this kind of presentation, workshops. You really want to understand, is there ways you can make things better? Quality of service. The quality of service is going to be spoken about in the community and it's going to be experienced in whenever there's a problem they reach out to you in the player support piece. But it's also going to reflect in the messaging around trust and safety. And the community engagement, the player support, and this whole process can be cost efficiently managed if you look at it as this infinity loop of player happiness that is surrounded by this envelope of trust and safety. I know, like if someone said to me, you're allowed one slide and you have to talk about everything I've spoken about, now that I've kind of spoken to you about it, you can see that this is the environment that a community thrives on. It all comes down to a single player and expands out or scales out from that. I'm happy to argue for hours and hours on this process. It's something I put together to say, like, if I'm in an elevator and people say, what do you do? I say, I protect the infinity loop of player happiness. Wow, I want to talk to this guy. What is that? How do I play that? So play any game and have fun. It's the infinity loop of player happiness. Okay, so some quick case studies, and I'm going to spend too long. As I said, this is in the process. I want to make sure that there's time for questions, answers, or you can dash to coffee. So Super League was looking for some moderation services, very kids-focused. And you had things like funny names for characters and how to do that. And they had nothing. They literally they were one of the biggest servers that use the tool for their kids and stuff. And they just had nothing. They had volunteers in the community. And like 13 and 14-year-olds were doing the work of moderators and banning their friends and closing down accounts, and it was just madness. Again, now it's a far more structured. And if you go look at the articles since this process, they've had actually really, really good growth because it's just a safer and more trusted environment. Sandbox, same kind of thing. Getting involved. Day one, we had concierge type services leading people through to how to work with it, how to play with it, how to engage better with it. It was a new concept. It was this new world. You come there. If there's no way of knowing what to do, you don't stay long. The community wasn't that helpful. Trying to get the community to engage more with new players, introducing them to each other. You put people in the world and you help them moderate and you help them take people by the hand and lead them through. Again, a different way of approaching a community solution. And then Mob Crush, basically a Discord community that was just sort of set up when it was made in relatively early days. No one really knew what Discord could or couldn't. Discord's fantastic, but it's not that intuitive. It's not that friendly, and it can be quite hard to get things done. Again, if you spend the time and you look after how you do things, you can actually put massive information out there, and it's safe, and it's an environment, and people can utilize it. You often think if you just build it, they will come. It doesn't kind of work in gaming, and it certainly doesn't kind of work in Discord. You do need to maintain it, and you do need to be proactive and engaging. The community is weird. It's there. It exists. You think they would step up, lead, and communicate amongst themselves, but they don't really. They find it quite hard. You see it in real life, so you see it online as well. Come in, folks, come in. You're just in time to ask questions. Yeah, questions and answers and thank yous and feedback and anything. I'm really interested. Thank you. Hopefully it helped. Yes, sir.
Yeah, we're recording it, so.
Hi. So I'm a community manager in QA for Topspring Games, a small indie studio. We have a quite active community and we're really blessed with it. We have moderators on our Discord, but they're basically, like you said, volunteered players. And for a while I've been looking at it, and yeah, at the end of the day it's individualism. So you have bad eggs everywhere. You trust someone for 1 year and then they have a bad day and they leash out onto your community. So it's really a gamble, but for me to convince my boss, quote unquote, to pay moderators on a Discord, that feels like, no, why would we pay someone who is just there to
do it
help
for free?
out?
Correct.
And I think there is a great argument because I mean, once you pay someone, you have accountability, I guess, and you have responsibility. But I wanted to hear your opinion about that because you mentioned it a little bit.
So that's a very good question, and it's very hard, especially when you have quite a long-serving game where you've had that approach for quite some time and you have massive knowledge in the community. So there's two sides to the coin. Me to the boss is that the community owns the community, not you. It's your brand, it's your voice, it's your process. You want to own the key fundamentals or the core part of that. When you go into the community and you have your own community, that you have the brand and voice, but you volunteer it to the players, you don't own. So that's the first thing. So the best way to attack an ROI is to get the marketing team on your side. If you want to now suddenly step in there and start doing all sorts of things with data, etc., your community says, no way, you don't. It's us, it's not you, we're volunteers. You're not having friendly folks, or you're not in control of the message of the voice or brand in a situation like that because it's in the hands of. Yes, you can guide them down a path. So your ally in this is where the marketing team play, and they usually have a lot of money. So you can go to him and say, we need to pilot and do benchmarks. I always say that you can't just replace one with other. You already have a lot of knowledge and you don't want to lose it, and you don't want to scare the community, and you don't want to make these shifts without them buying into it. So you should get the buy-in to pilot, to say, hey guys, you're working, but there's gaps. Not everyone works at the same time, and we don't expect you to, and you're volunteers. And so we need to have certain hours where there's always got to be someone when there's none of us available. Because that also happens. You have this community and they're volunteering and they may work late at night, but no one's in the office. But your moderation team can be an extension of your core team and they can work those hours. And so there's ways to put that pilot together, and then you do some A/B benchmarking and see what results do you get, what data is, how are you owning the voice better, how are you able to implement some of these strategies around compliance and privacy. And that's then the story that leads. So for me, it's not one wholesale change to another, but a small amount of money on a pilot, run it for 6 months, revisit, run it for 6 months, revisit, and then it's no longer. And we find within a year, it just shifts and everyone gets rid of. When they suddenly realize what the exposure to risk is with that, it changes very quickly.
So it's kind of like proving that it has.
And that's the thing a community should be. That's my point of this overarching, okay, we're doing it this way? No, we're going to do it that way. That's that big brother is watching you and then the community doesn't. You have to treat it as that gentle, careful, flowering rose with petals that can fall off at any time if you shake it too hard, if that makes sense.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you.
What happens if you shake it too hard? Like, how can you get back of like a situation where you broke
that's
that
a great
trust?
question, and sometimes it does need to be shaken hard. Sometimes it's something that's happened over 4 or 5 years. You used it one way, you're out of compliance, you're out of time, you've got some challenges. Sometimes you have to shake it hard. Again, transparency and honesty. This is the situation. This is why we're going to do this. This is what we expect to happen. We want your support. Help us make this better. It's always engaging the community. But be aware, you are going to feel quite hard shaken. Sometimes it happens and the decision's made and then I see it all the time where we've been providing services Companies had a bit of a tough time, to be quite frank. Then they come to their customer care manager and their trust and safety manager and say, come, he's having a tough time, get cheaper quotes in, we don't care. And they're like, customer care manager and trust and safety managers, well, these guys work well, we do this, don't care, cheaper quotes. And they literally go to not really horrible providers, and overnight things change, and you just see the ticket queues go out of whack, etc. It affects the game. The cost of doing that, the knock-on effect back, you don't recover. Can you always recover the community? There's always going to be loyal folk. If you can reach out to them, if you can engage them, you can say, we made a mistake, we're saying sorry, please come back, here's a way to come back. But if you don't have that connection, if you haven't built the community correctly, if you haven't built the ways that you can interact with them, and your players are anonymous to you and they go away, you've lost. Because how do you get back in contact to say, please come back, please forgive us, we'll make it worth your while, here's 1,000 gems to come play again and start up again. And then you've got to go on massive acquisition, and you know what that costs. So that's why, again, I keep saying community is the voice that's unheard often. How often are community invited to marketing meetings with the next acquisition, or the day you know that an event is happening in player support or community is the day it breaks and all chaos breaks loose because nobody told you. That still happens, believe it or not, in gaming on a regular basis. I'm not saying it does happen everywhere, and there are some good companies and they do include the community, but often it's an afterthought. Like, have you asked your players about this? A great example recently, I don't know, and I'm going to use them, I hope no one from Space Ape is here. Space Ape? I play that game because I really like it. Chrome Valley Restorations. Old farts, like a match 3, don't want a girly match 3. Match 3, restore cars. How cool can that be? Next thing, they bring this whole business functionality in it, and you have to open a hamburger store, and you have to open a store that creates the tire, and if you can't create the tire, you can't build the car, and you have to flip cars. And the community just said, hey, what the hell, left in droves. And guess what? We're sad to say that even though it's been kind of successful, the business section will be shutting down. You can play it until this date, and then it will no longer be available. How much money did they spend in putting it out there? How many players did they lose? They didn't ask the community. I'm a match 3 guy who's busy at events and running around. I want to play a game that's a bit mindless. I want to match 3, restore a car, get on with things. Enhance the car restoration handover, or do something cool about that. Why go and build this whole subsection of a game where I now have to run businesses and invite people to town and get the mayor happy and buy land? And I didn't sign up for that crap. There's a perfect example of not talking to your community. So, yeah, guys, don't be scared to shout at your marketing department. Sir?
Sorry, I'm afraid we do not have time for
One
any
more
questions, but
I'll hang around.
But yeah, Peter is going to be there at the Q&A zone. This is just right on the corner down the hall. But thank you very much.
Thank you, guys. Thank you very much.
Thank you.